Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today for the fourth series or fourth installment of the Closing the Gap series. My name is Eddie Gill with Wise Financial with Northwestern Mutual. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm honored to have the two panelists that will join me here shortly in great conversation in terms of what it takes to provide some resources and some education around the financial awareness and literacy topic area. We're really passionate about what we're doing here, really happy and excited to have this opportunity to share some information, and I'm even more excited about our panelists here today. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the folks that are able to bring this to you here. Emil Ekior with InnoPower has done a tremendous job of being a leader in our community. Robert Shagog with the Indianapolis Recorder has been instrumental in providing that digital presence to get these messages out there to the community. Would like to thank Northwestern Mutual, Wise Financial, in supporting this and being a part of this whole entire initiative. And we look to continue to move this forward. I want to take this time to thank and acknowledge and introduce our great panelists here today, Rachel LABI and Bahia Shabazz. I am so excited to have you both joining us here today. And we'll start with Rachel LABI. Rachel LABI is a YES Fellow and high school senior in Indiana. Her passion for the eradication of labor trafficking has inspired her to work towards a business management degree to later become a nonprofit executive. Rachel has pursued her business education through camps, courses, and internships. She has written about the importance of financial education in the policy circle, and she has spoken about youth initiative at the New America Inside Out event. In October 2020, Rachel joined 15 other YES Fellows as presenters at a youth policy summit co-hosted by Voices and the Commission on Improving the Status of Children in Indiana. She has also co-founded Building Financial Freedom, an organization dedicated to fostering financial literacy in youth through bank-school collaboration. I'm extremely excited to have Rachel LABI here with us. She has a unique perspective as someone who sat in this seat and currently sitting in this seat in terms of the education system. And we talk how we should potentially put in some sort of mandate to have these resources of financial literacy and awareness in those K through 12 years. Rachel LABI, maybe with some opening remarks. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rachel LABI, and as Eddie stated, yes, I am the co-founder of Building Financial Freedom, which is an organization dedicated to bank-school collaboration, because we see the gaps in financial education in Indiana, and we want to fix it through legislative and collaborative means.
Thank you, Ms. LABI. Really appreciate that, and excited to have you here today. Moving on to Bahia Shabazz. She is known as a community leader to educate on ways to close the wealth gap in African-American community. Her passion continues as she partners her nonprofit organization, Brown Girls Do Invest, with other community organizations and local school corporations to offer programs on investing in the stock market, investing in real estate, and acquiring multiple streams of income. Mm-hmm. Bahia's passion began in college when she realized that the lack of financial literacy caused debt and insecurity. Through a financial and economic background, she advises on how to break down numbers to build for profit through planning and investing. Bahia was featured in Black Enterprise on launching the first ever financial education tour for Black women. She is currently producing a documentary, The State of Black Economics in America. Bahia Shabazz is a doctoral candidate for the Doctor of Business Administration, specializing in finance at Walden University. She has a global financial crisis certificate from Yale University, a public policy certificate, behavior economics, and a former financial advisor. Incredibly excited to have you here with us, Ms. Shabazz. Please provide some opening remarks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am Bahia Shabazz. Thank you, Eddie, for that introduction. Just to elaborate a little further, I'm excited. I'm going to tell you why I am excited about this panel discussion. It's because I love to make sure that our community is moving forward, which is one of the reasons why I founded Brown Girls Do Invest in 2016. We are a nonprofit organization, and not only do we meet with people throughout the country, but my My jewel is when I step inside the schools and collaborate with the students to educate them on financial literacy. In addition to that, of course, I have a financial firm that I partner with small businesses, and we work as their financial department. So when I tell you I love to break down numbers to build it up, I truly do. And I believe that it starts with conversations like this, because people don't know what they don't know until they realize they don't know it. And it's up to people such as Rachel and myself to educate others on the importance of financial literacy. So I'm looking forward to this discussion today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shabazz. Thrilled to have you here, and looking forward to tapping into your insight and your wisdom. I want to come back to Ms. LABI here. She has a very unique perspective. We as adults, we're always trying to provide all these different resources and say what kids should do and what they shouldn't do. I'd love to hear from Ms. LABI. She is well beyond her years, but also having her own personal experience. First, maybe you can share a little bit about what Yes Fellow is. What is a Yes Fellow, and potentially going into your building a financial freedom organization as well.
So Yes Fellows is an organization that brings youth from all across Indiana together to create policies. And we had an October summit in 2020, and me, along with 15 other Yes Fellows, presented our policy proposals to hundreds of Indiana policymakers. And these policymakers range from council members to senators. And I was in the economic and educational and equity group, so all of our proposals were centered around that one topic. And within my group, there were people who had been through homelessness and poverty. And so we thought, what can we do to prevent this in other youth? And we decided to advocate for a mandatory personal finance class in Indiana schools. And since then, my personal finance advocacy has increased. I never thought I would found Building Financial Freedom, but I did, along with other members of my group and Yes Fellows. And so we're just trying to build financial literacy through education, and hopefully we can use other measures as well.
Thank you. That is amazing. I hadn't heard of this, didn't know it was there. So really appreciate your perspective and being part of this and leading the charge, because clearly the youth is our future here, and we have these resources in place, be incredibly important for sure. Tell me a little bit about the personal finance course in terms of the content. Have you dived into what that content may look like and what's most valuable for kids in your position?
So initially, when we were advocating for a required personal finance class, we looked at the personal financial responsibility course in Indiana, because Indiana schools, all of them do offer it at least. So we thought credit, managing debt, student loans, things like that can be applicable to students are very important. But then we realized in Indiana, there's actually provision. It says that in grades 6 through 12, you need to learn financial education. So that's already more extensive than most states, but that's not always being done correctly. I looked at the requirements for what you need to know by a certain grade level, and one of the things you had to know was philanthropy. And I don't remember ever discussing that in school. So we're working on just fixing that provision instead of a mandatory class right now. And that's what we're focused on at the moment.
That's great. Thank you so much. Ms. Shabazz, what are your thoughts on the mandate of having some sort of financial literacy or awareness program being instituted in some of or basically the entire education system that we have in place now?
My thoughts on it is I strongly believe that it's important, and it should be a mandate. Of course, I'm biased because this is my realm. However, one of the things that I noticed, and I'm glad Rachel spoke about it in regards to what is needed in the curriculum. A lot of students do not realize the importance of financial literacy. They do not have those skills, and they do not have the knowledge allowed to make them, to allow them to have informed and effective decisions with the financial resources that they receive. However, better yet, they don't even know that they have the resources available. And we do have to acknowledge that at times there is lack of equity when it comes to providing, depending on where you are in Indiana. I am Northwest Indiana, and a lot of our schools in Lake County district do not have those resources, which are really needed. But if we don't have the financial literacy to mandate, then we eventually push a generation out the door, for the lack of better term, out the door, not knowing what to do. So they become adults who mismanage money as well. And it's not just the mismanagement part of the money, it's the habits, it's building upon the behaviors that we need to discuss. And we also need to address, how did we get here? And exactly what does closing the gap mean, and educating the youth on that as well. Because if we don't know, we cannot do better. So in my opinion, I strongly believe that this should be mandated. And it's something that we're having this conversation right now, because this is where it begins. This is laying the groundwork. I'm so excited to hear what Rachel and Yes is doing, because I had no idea. And I'm over here just screaming on the inside, like, yes, yes, yes. And I'm clapping for her. I'm like, this is the youth. This is who's going to make a difference. And it doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you have a voice and you have a passion, this is where it begins. And working with those who can partner with you to help you move forward, because you're not going to know everything. But if you can grab somebody and create a curriculum, from banking to credit to investing, and there's so many other things that we're going to talk about today, but this is where it begins. And our legislation, they need to realize that this is important, and the importance of this. That's my opinion.
No, I totally agree. I'm on board, and we need to try to figure out how we can continue to support that and get as many voices that are speaking towards this same topic and the same initiative. Because you're right, without having that life experience or family that's has the legacy plans in place, a lot of our kids are just growing up and just aren't aware of it. They don't get hit in the face with some of these things until you're well into your adult years, and obviously it's never too late. It's never too late to learn. But if we can teach some of these key life lessons, whether it's middle school years on to their high school years, they'll be that much better coming out. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Can I add to that, if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
So when as we get into the conversation, the more I'm thinking about it, of course, when we talk about just closing the gap period, and I know this is the fourth series, and I look back at some of the other things, and I love the topics that you guys went over. And when you think about closing the gap, of course, we have to talk about home ownership. Lack of, due to policies, income inequality, as well as the stock market not investing. But one of the things that I feel as though we're discussing right now is that a lot of people do not consider, as far as closing the gap, is generational wealth gap. And when we discuss generational wealth gap, I was looking at some of the things, researching before what some analysts are saying, and they're concerned about our younger Americans. And what are we doing? If we're so concerned, we need to make sure that we address what it is that they're lacking. And basically, they're lacking the finances. And right now, the younger American finances are much more uncertain than generations that were ahead of them, due to mismanaging, due to the student loan debt, due to not being aware of how taxes are taken out of your paycheck, and the difference between gross and net income. So today's young people are unfortunately worse off financially than young people and than in previous generations were. And those disadvantages may only compound if we do not implement and mandate personal finance curriculum like we're trying to do right now. That's it.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Ms. LABI, if you can share a little bit about, I know you mentioned the policy proposals that you have in place. What age groups, in terms of the grade level that you have kind of suggested or proposed from a legislative standpoint?
So from a legislative standpoint, we are currently working with Representative Karakov, and because we found out about the provision that says 6th through 12th grade, you have to learn financial education, we're going to be focused on that age group, because we didn't even know that was a provision at first. And so knowing that, we need to make sure that's being done. But on BFF side, we're mainly focused on high school students.
Okay, and then tell me about the acronym BFF. I want to make sure our viewers know what that is.
So BFF is the organization I co-founded. It's called Building Financial Freedom, And we don't believe that Indiana students are prepared to enter the worlds of budgeting, credits, loan management. So we decided banks often offer programs for youth and often offer education in terms of finances, and schools need that. So it makes sense for them to work together. And so this type of alliance could help us tailor the curriculum while being considerate of other factors like cultural, socioeconomic, racial, just things that could be sensitive. And we also acknowledge that when students learn about things that are applicable to them in the present, they're going to pay more attention. So we're actually working on a survey right now to send out to banks and schools to see their interest in working together. And we would kind of be the middleman. And with the bank and school survey results yielded, we can organize lesson plans, pop-up events, coordinate other educational strategies, and coursework to prepare Indiana students financially.
Fantastic. I do want to take the time to encourage all of our viewers and listeners there. So there's a chat feature here. If you have any questions, please reach out through using that feature, and we'll make sure we get to those questions as well. I guess one follow-up with that in mind, if there are other youth organizations out there that are trying to doing similar things, or maybe there's other kids out there who would just like to be involved, how do they get involved and try to better support this movement?
So one thing we recommend is looking into your networks. You might not know the heads of banks, but you might know librarians, managers, financial advisors, principals, or teachers who might be interested in doing this or learning more about financial education so they can provide education to other youth. So yeah, looking into your networks. And then on our website, there's actually the survey that anyone can take. You don't have to be a bank or any type of financial institution or a school. You can be another organization that's interested. And you can tell us to contact them on our website or take the survey or email us. That's also on the website. And also you could check out my LinkedIn and contact me there. We need allies. So if any organizations are interested, please tell us, and just encourage your financial institutions to provide youth programs as well. And you can encourage it in your own community, work with your school and work with other financial institutions to try and make something out of that.
No, that's great. I think that's important. I'm always saying, hey, we can do far more together than we can apart. So if we can get you as many allies as possible, that's what we're here for. And obviously, it's only better for all of us, right? So we'll definitely continue to push that. Ms. Shabazz, maybe you could share a little bit about the organization Brown Girls Do Invest and kind of some of the initiatives and what you've done and what you're trying to accomplish there.
Yes, with Brown Girls Do Invest, Rachel just made me think about one of the African proverbs that we use within Brown Girls Do Invest. One of them is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So with us, we do collaborate with various organizations as well as experts in the industry. And what we've done as far as an academic level, we've gone into local school corporations and created after-school programs as well as programs during spring break and summer. And what we do, especially in the summertime, we have an extensive program where we teach from 12 years young all the way up to high school. However, we are finding that childhood financial attitude, habits, and norms develop between the ages of 6 and 12 years old. So we are looking to create a curriculum for younger than 12 years. So what we do is we go in and we started out solely focusing on investing in real estate and talking about the business realm as far as what career aspirations the students have and how would that work in their life, meaning once they choose a career and their income, and us breaking down what their goals, personal and business goals are, and creating scenes where they're budgeting and actually showing the importance of budget. And we create an entire scenario where once you do budget, do you have a family or not? How does the credit look? Establishing and sustaining credit and teaching them about that aspect, as well as saving. For me, and I know there's some people who may clutch their pearls when we're teaching students. Now, my goal is to make sure they learn how to save more than they spend. Right now, you see a lot of the the calculations to like 50, 30, 20, 20 for your needs, 30 for your wants, and 50% towards something else. However, the way I'm trying to teach the youth before they graduate from high school and earn their first check is to actually just live off of 50% of their earned income. 50%. And the reason why I say that is we spend so much, Americans spend so many years working, and then we finally retire at the age of 65 and have a lifespan to 78. And we do not enjoy ourselves, as opposed to learning how to properly manage your money prior to graduating from high school, learning that, okay, if I do earn $75,000 a year and Uncle Sam takes his 30% off the top, which is for my math, $22,500, leaving them with a net income of $52,500. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to pay your mortgage? How much are you saving? How much are going toward extracurricular activities? So literally having a plan to address so that they can account for every penny and maximize every opportunity. So we talk about that and getting people to understand that just because you earn $52,500 net does not mean you have to spend $52,500 net. Let's talk about ways where you can enjoy your life and have a positive quality of life. So that's what we do with Brown Girls Do Invest on as far as academic. Since we're talking about that, because again, we teach a lot of adults how to invest in the stock market, real estate, and acquire multiple streams of income. And it's amazing how many adults do not have that foundation. And I strongly believe that if they had that in school and had conversations with other people, then they would eventually start to do better because they would know more. And the sad part about it is when you get a certain age, a lot of people, they don't want to admit that they don't know certain things when it's very important. It's very important. And for all of us to work as a village, from administration, policymakers, parents, students. For me, the mandate starts at home. That's where it starts for me. I strongly believe that if we have everyone working together, we can roll out a curriculum and basically reinforce throughout all aspects of life. So that's what Brown Girls Do Invest.
Thank you. No, I think that's incredibly powerful and obviously very much needed. Ms. LABI, coming back to you, within Yes Fellow and obviously Building Financial Freedom, I think you have allies within those organizations there. Your peers that you may share some of the things that you're doing with. What kind of feedback are you getting from those folks as well that are, like I said, not necessarily in the organization, but they know what you do and how you do it. What kind of feedback are you getting? Are they supportive? Are they looking to try to continue to do this, or what are the thoughts there?
They're all very supportive and encouraging me to keep this long term, which I do plan to do. Many of my collaborators are still my collaborators, and even though some of them are no longer part of my movement, they're still with me, encouraging me as I continue to tackle personal finance education. No,
that's good. I will say we did have a question come in regarding contact information. Want to make sure that everyone knows that all three of us are on LinkedIn, and we'll also make sure we include some contact information as we wrap up. But that is one definite resource that any of our viewers can use is via LinkedIn. Share some more content that way as well. And Ms. Shabazz, so from a legislative standpoint, what do you see as the biggest challenges and the biggest hurdles to get this mandate pushed through?
In my opinion, it's laying the groundwork. As simple as that sounds, we have to realize that and make a case that to prioritize financial education and gain that buy-in. Once we gain that buy-in, then we start setting our strategy. We develop the vision and road map. I always have a problem with my R's. Once we do that, then we have to define what the structure is and organizing people and assets to impact for longevity. So that part right there, defining and structure for me is what we really need to focus on and what the policy makers need to realize, because again, we have so much passion on this panel discussion right now. It's needless to say, Rachel and I, we're moving forward. However, we can move forward so much, but when policymakers are saying, okay, yes, you have the surveys together, you have the people behind you. How are we going to set this up? What is the vision for this? What is the roadmap? And we need to make sure that we address any obstacles that may come about. Of course, we're going to hear what is not in the budget. We don't have time for this. Who's going to create this curriculum? If we have everything set in place, then we can address those obstacles that policymakers may have for us. But for me, it's define the structure. How is that going to look? And that's exactly what we need to do once we organize the people.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And Ms. LABI, what are you seeing? I know you said you've had those policy proposals in place with Yes Fellow. There are provisions out there. What challenges are you seeing as you get some of these things implemented in a more efficient way? Even though the provisions are there, it sounds like the implementation is a whole nother issue, and execution is the biggest piece. What are you seeing as the challenges?
Yes, so we aren't sure that the provisions are being upheld in an efficient and educationally fruitful manner. Although Indiana does require an economics class, which a lot of states don't, that's obviously not the same thing as personal finance, and economics tends to be more theoretical. And some issues we see are that it just seems to be a problem to actually start, because it seems like a lot of policymakers do support this idea, but they just won't really do anything about it, or they don't see how pressing it is. And obviously not all kids are being taught about financial literacy in the home. And we're a nation that has a lot of inequality. We have a lot of debt, financial instability. So it's important that we equip our youth with an understanding of financial literacy and how to manage finances and necessary debt. And especially because we're in a pandemic, we're constantly forced to reevaluate our priorities and adjust our national, state, and local budgets. So we're not just preparing youth to survive, we're preparing them to thrive and prosper, even when emergencies arise. And Indiana is a conservative state, so we have even more of a reason to support this kind of effort. And I found myself working with Democrats and Republicans, so it just shows that you don't have to be on the same end of the political spectrum to collaborate on policies to help with financial literacy. And another issue is obviously the gaps. There are so many different gaps. Parents, according to T. Rowe Price's Kids and Money survey, parents tend to speak differently when they're talking to boys and girls about money. And there's also race gaps, the education inequality. And in places where there are 75% of the children who have free or reduced lunch, the kids sometimes have access to financial literacy courses. But in places where less than 25% of the kids are free or reduced lunch, they are 3 times more likely to actually require the class, and they are more likely to even offer it. So it just shows that there are so many different gaps, and these gaps are in so many different areas of life: education, healthcare, financial education, and even the racial gap. So there's a racial gap between Blacks and whites in every income group except for the bottom. But the bottom is where everyone's net worth is 0. So there's a gap everywhere else, and that's a big issue. So when we're addressing these gaps, we need to make sure that we're looking at all parts of Indiana and making sure they each have access to proper training, proper equipment, proper coursework, any resources to help them, because it's unfair to have this type of playing field, because as a society, we often expect people to do well, but how are you supposed to do well when you're battling things like poverty and generational inequality?
That's awesome. That is incredibly awesome. Ms. Shabazz, you'd like to add to that?
Yes, and it's something Rachel said that, because when you look at the statistics, about 72% of students in wealthier communities in the state of Indiana have access to personal finance resources, as opposed to 56% who are in lower income level. And not to say that everyone does not need it, but it's safe to say that the lower income level most definitely need this. And as Rachel pointed out, throughout the state of Indiana, I am in Lake County, Indiana, and when you and I'm outside of Gary. So when you Google poor cities, unfortunately, in Indiana. Gary is listed as one of them. However, we're so neglected up here. And I feel as though once we mandate this personal finance course, we build an initiative around it and set the standards and requirements so that we show the need in every neighborhood that we have in community that we have in the state of Indiana. And once we do that, we reinforce expectations for learning and instruction. And I'm very aware that some teachers may have a little reservation in regards to how to teach, but that's what this is going to include. We're going to, as we are already doing this, I'm speaking it into existence, already have teacher training set up. And those are something that this should involve: developing a capacity for effective financial education delivery. Make sure the teachers are properly trained. And I think that's a twofold. Once the students are trained, the teachers are trained as well. And to have those classroom resources. And for me, to once you do your survey to see where exactly is the need, is the importance more on budgeting, is the importance more on closing the economic gap when it comes to income, or is the importance more in this particular neighborhood on savings or investing? I would love for this mandate, although it would have a guideline on what is required. I would look at it as though it is, like I tell people, when you are invested, it's not a one size shirt fits all. Everyone is different. Everyone's needs are different. And if we're going to do our due diligence, we literally have to look into these cities and towns of the state of Indiana and see what that need is and address those needs. Because what you see that's needed in Lake County may not be in Indianapolis. So we really have to make sure we do that. And we have to make sure that the classroom resources support. And I too am a teacher. I teach economics in a college here. And I try not to teach with the theories. I walk through the door and they're like, oh my God, you were not what I expected. Yes, I'm not a unicorn. I am here. And what I like to do is associate real life situations and what's going on in our backyard to the various theories that are there. I can talk all day long on what's going on in macroeconomics and as well as micro. But if someone just hears me speaking and they don't know how it's associated with the mom and pop store that's down the street, it goes over their head. So I think it's very important when we are building this initiative to actually tune in on the particular towns and cities and look at those gaps. Right now, we are at a pivotal moment in our society where we want equality and we want to address the lack of equity. And in order for us to do that, it cannot be a blanket. You really have to listen in order to provide the tools that are needed to our community. So for me, I really would like for us to make sure that we build this initiative by setting the standards and requirements and properly teaching and training the teachers to roll this out and providing adequate classroom resources in order for this to be effective. It's going to be more than just offering a personal finance course, because yes, you can offer that. We can either do it as a standalone or implement it into existing courses. For me personally, I would like to have a standalone because I don't want it to get washed inside the existing courses. And I'm speaking from a personal point of view. Since I teach economics as well, it's easy for me to, yes, I can follow the statewide curriculum, but then I can just glance over a particular topic. And I don't want it to be glanced over. I want to make sure that everything is discussed when it comes to this, because a lot of people do not realize that the consequences of poor financial knowledge is basically for the rest of your life. It's long lasting. Young adults may have to live with these consequences for the rest of their life if they do not know how to properly budget, save, invest, protect themselves. And what does that look like? That looks like trillions of dollars that's accumulated in debt and debt levels. they right now is a sense of urgency, because when you look at how much we owe as Americans right now owe $1 trillion in credit card debt. Let that sit with you right now. 1 trillion with the T, right? $1 trillion in credit card debt in car loans. But we don't even think about how do we get there. Students think about, okay, once I graduate from high school, I can go to college, get a job, I'll buy a home, I'll get a car, and then they're living the rest of their lives in debt, not in let alone student loan debt. Speaking on behalf of the representatives of Black women, we are the largest group of educated individuals in the United States, right? However, we only earn 63 cents on the dollar compared to Caucasian men. And there was a survey that was recently done that Black females, only 57% of the Black females in that survey who has student loan debt, because they're paying their student loan debt, can barely purchase basic essential needs. But again, had we had those conversations, and I'm not saying a conversation in a curriculum will completely negate, but it's going to provide you the tools in order for you to create positive habits, right? Habits form out of just routine, day in and day out, and it becomes a way of life. For us to sit down and once we figure out how much are we going to earn, how much are we going to spend, what we're going to spend it on, we can start eliminating some of that debt. That is a lot of debt for us as Americans to have. And I truly believe that if we are educated and continue with education, even after high school, we should always read to inform us daily. And if we do this and build this initiative with the policymakers so that we can just stop any red flags at the door, we should be able to move forward.
No, I totally agree. Thank you so much. The education piece is monumental. It's a huge piece. And I wanted to ask Ms. LABI one question in regards to the provision and how the lack of implementation has really suffered. As it states now, do you see it as something that's just available as maybe it's an elective for middle and high school students, or is it a core competency of the class there where it's mandated that student has it? You understand what I'm saying? So where is it just an elective where it's just available and the students can decide whether they want to choose it or not? In your policy proposal, are you suggesting that it's mandatory that each and every student go through one of these courses, or is it just an elective for those students?
With our initial proposal, we wanted it to be mandatory. Right now, we're in a halt with that because we feel like it's unrealistic to wish for that until we focus on the provision that says 6th through 12th grade, you have to learn. But we would like it to be mandatory because, like she said, I don't even remember learning basic personal finance things. And I took economics last year, and you have to learn a bit of personal finance in that class, but it was very much washed over. And I don't think a lot of kids are being prepared well. So I think a standalone class would be good. And yes, Indiana is ahead of its game. In terms of economics, we require a class, but there are some states like Michigan that have standardized testing. There are places that require personal finance classes, but that's only like 6 states, but still we could be doing a lot more. And so I think around America, we're lacking in general in finance education, not just for youth, but for adults too. So something like this would at least level the playing field a bit. So that's why we're focusing on that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you know better, you do better. And if you're not understanding these concepts until adulthood and you've made several mistakes to put you behind the start line, it clearly is impactful to your entire life. To Ms. Shabazz's point, you make some of these decisions early on, it could have a negative impact really long term. Ms. Shabazz, what are your thoughts on that being a core competency of the education system, or versus the elective system that it could potentially pose?
Oh, it is, as I stated, it should be a core. It should not be included within an existing course. And I know it's so much easier for us to just do that. But again, I do not want the teacher to just wash over it. I mean, let's face it. If you have the opportunity to say, okay, this is how the statewide curriculum is for your particular class. You're going to talk about, let's just say economics. We're talking about the deficit. We're talking about business cycle. We're talking about Keynesian theory. We're talking about classical theory. And then you throw something in there that says personal finance. Okay, let's just go ahead. Yeah, personal finance, get your money together and let's go. Okay, the next subject, it should not be that way.
Sure.
When you look at statistics, a lot of teachers feel as though they're not properly qualified to teach personal finance because they don't know it themselves. However, that's why I feel it's very important during the building the initiative phase to have proper training. And that does not mean that you have to create a whole nother aspect that policymakers have to think about. As it was mentioned before, what's in your network? Who do you know that's currently doing this? Oh, Brown Girls Do Invest. Who else do you know who's doing this? You can find nonprofit organizations and other organizations networks that the state can collaborate with, and they already have these existing programs in place. Right. So since they have it in place, then that's when you can see what curricular they have that will lay down those tools for the teachers to have a foundation and learn themselves, so that when a mandate does come out and say, no, this is a personal finance course that must consist of A, B, and C. And not only just having those courses out there, but how are we going to not only improve, but how are we going to scale? Because we shouldn't just put a course out there and just leave it alone. Any course that we have, it does not matter if it's the state of Indiana, Illinois, Ohio. Whenever you put out an academic course, you have to look at ways on how you're going to improve and scale. And that can be through surveys, tests, and seeing how we can just continue to move forward. And with the surveys and tests, we see what we're lacking as well as what we're doing correct. So yeah, the courses should definitely be a standalone, not included, because I want to make sure that the students, when they graduate from high school, they know what they're doing. Because let's think about this. Now, for me, I took calculus in high school as well as in college. I took trigonometry, I took geometry. Yes, I'm in numbers, but some of it, I don't need to know anything about a trapezoid right now, but we had to learn it, right? However, when it comes to personal finance, it does not matter from budgeting all the way to investing. We are definitely going to use every bit of information. And what I love about it is then when we think about closing the wealth gap, now we are addressing generational wealth gap, because they have those tools in order to close out. So now they don't have to think about, okay, what if I'm going to be homeless? I'm going to tell you this. Had a conversation one time, letting you in my home a little bit, had a conversation one time with my husband. This was years ago. Our son is now 20 years old. Our son was 8 years old. And he loves. His dad is that's his superhero. So everything his dad does, he does. Now, we're a little different when it comes to managing money, right? Although my husband's a saver, I'm really into let's look at everything. If it's not on the list, we're not getting it. It's not on the budget. If I go grocery shopping, if you didn't ask for it, I'm not getting it. But my husband, he's like, oh no, if that's on sale, I'm getting it. I'm like, we didn't talk about this. Son would watch our husband, right? Had a conversation. We have to be mindful about what we're doing with our money. This is when he was 8 years old. And at that moment, we implemented weekly financial conversations. So we talk in our home, something hits our home every week, right? Income. What are we going to spend? How are we going to spend it? We agree on what we're going to spend, what we're going to save, how much we're going to invest, who gets what discretionary income. So his, hers, ours in an account together so that we can pay our bills, right? So we ever since then, included our son. So then when he does ask for things, we don't have to say, oh no, we don't have it. It's not that we don't have it for that. In addition to that, prior to that conversation, implementing the financial conversations, I said, listen, if we continue to do what we're doing, you're basically going to teach our son to be homeless. He's like, what does that mean? If we're not showing him leading by example, how to budget, how to manage money. When he becomes an adult, he's going to earn his first check and just ball out of control without any responsibility. So I truly believe that this is where it starts. We have to make sure that we have a curriculum for the students that has a standalone class. So then think about it, had he been taught in school, then we come home and we reinforce, right? We reinforce. It's so much needed. We're teaching all the things, not to say that math is not important, it's not, but we don't use everything we're taught in high school, but we would definitely use personal finance course. Definitely, no matter what age you are. Stand alone. That's what I say.
No, I appreciate that. Definitely.
No problem.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. The education piece is clearly the ticket for all of these issues that we're discussing. Ms. LABI, as it concerns Yes Fellow, building financial freedom, are you hosting events? Are you doing things that others can kind of rally and get behind? We do have another question in terms of how can others support your efforts and what you're doing, and obviously the group of people that you're working with.
So currently the best thing to do would be to refer us to friends or colleagues or anyone you think would be interested in this, and then contacting us through our website. But also one of our members had the idea of making a youth financial literacy pop-up event, and we actually just started this organization. We actually got everything done this month. So we still have a long way to go, but I think that would be the best thing for now, because right now we're trying to collect the data and see who's interested in working with us.
And when you say website, are you referencing the Yes Fellow, or are you referencing Building Financial Freedom?
I'm referencing the Building Financial Freedom website, which I can link here.
Yeah, that'd be great if you get added there in the chat. I believe our viewers will be able to see that and potentially participate as well. While you do that, I'll go to Mr. Badge. In our prep call, you mentioned one thing that I think is really important. So obviously the education piece is huge, and if we can rally, get those things implemented, mandated, people will be better off. But in terms of the personal accountability piece and changing the mindset, as you mentioned, things that are going on in everyone's individual home, and I believe some of it is revolving around just awareness, a trust factor. What can we do? What are some of the things that you think are most important in changing that mindset from a personal accountability standpoint?
Oh, as far as changing your mindset, is what we're doing right now, having conversations, is in starting at home, having a conversation with parents, relatives, friends. A lot of people do not like to talk about money. It's such a taboo when it should not be. But when we start having conversation, we are actively engaging in conversation, and we are consciously looking for ways to improve. It starts to change our mindset when we start to see that there is another way other than what I've been shown. And the unfortunate part is with undeveloped communities, we have that mindset that we are trapped, that this is all that we have. But just educating, enlightening, engaging, informing, producing and supplying resources for people to read, and actually connecting those with people who could be in their circle. Like, for instance, Rachel, if there are students who see her as a peer and see what she's doing, they feel as though it is plausible for them to change their mindset and to know that this is not truly a way of life that I have to live, but that I have something that I can do better, and actually implementing it every single day. Anyone who wants to change the mindset of whatever it is that you want to do, you basically have to practice. You basically have to exercise that muscle that a lot of people refuse to, especially during our technology days. A lot of people do not, but there's nothing wrong with, even as you Google or pick up a book, what are you doing that's going to allow you to make yourself a better person? And I feel as though that's very important for us to change our mindset. That's where anything begins. Anything begins, whether even while we're talking about mandating this particular policy, that is laying the groundwork. getting people to buy in into what you're doing and changing that mindset and showing that having a better quality of life is feasible, right? And once you get those people on board, then you're addressing policymakers. But before you can address the policymakers, people in your community, they have to see that there is a need. They have to see those gaps, and they have to look at this through another type of lens, so that they can address any discrepancies that we have in our community. But for me, it starts with the individual, starts in the home, and then it goes out from there.
That's great, thank you. Ms. LABI, so I want to get your perspective. Again, we talked about the unique perspective that you have in the seat that you're in terms of your peer group. With that kind of piggybacking on Ms. Shabazz, with that mindset, what are you seeing with your peers and what they're most receptive to, or willing to open up to in terms of this particular topic?
I think a lot of my peers know that they don't know much about personal finance, and they'd be open to learning about it. As a Yes Fellow, one of my group members, she was actually homeless because of her mother's drug addiction, and so she kept sitting on friends' couches overnight, and she also had physical pain, so she needed a root canal, but she didn't have the money. So eventually she had to get a lot of loans because she didn't have insurance to cover the cost. And she ended up having to use all of her savings during her freshman year of college, and she couldn't even attend graduation in her senior year of high school because she didn't have the money to get vaccinated, and she was unable to comply with her high school's vaccination requirements. And so I heard about stories like that from a lot of my Yes Fellows. I heard from a lot of people who were having financial issues in the home. And I think a lot of people in Yes Fellows were supportive of this idea because they've seen the issues that their parents struggle with and their community struggle with. So this would provide a way to at least potentially get better and to do better in the future. And it sets kids up for success, which is something that our education system doesn't always do.
No, I totally agree. I think that's the biggest thing is if you can get the younger folks, obviously, to be a part of it and continue that movement. We've seen the power in numbers that young people can provide. I think that is huge. Mr. Baz, you and I also talked about what that preparation and importance looks like. Are there any specific, when you say finance, that's a broad topic.
Yes,
right?
it is.
So it's a very broad. If you had to single out one or two where you would start from, what would be one of the most important things that we could focus on?
When it comes to
individually do, whether there's a mandate or not. You talked about the conversations in the home. What are the things that people potentially can do, regardless of their circumstance? Obviously, there's different levels to it. You mentioned the point earlier about ultimately we need to meet people where they are.
yes.
But what are those things? One or two of the most important things that people can start to do from a financial standpoint.
Well, outside of having the conversation and meeting people where they are, I personally feel as though not shaming those as well, from about where they are, because everyone is on their own level and everyone has their own journey. And a lot of times people do not disclose where they are in life because they are ashamed and they don't want others to look at them a certain type of way. But if I can choose, because finance is so broad, and if I could choose one thing to do to start out with other than conversations, is to budget. Is to budget. And I'm going to tell you why. A lot of times it's not how much you earn, it's how much you spend. I've worked with people who earn 6 and 7 figures, but are so much in a deficit because their expenses outweigh their income sources, right? So, and I've seen people and I've worked with people who earn $30,000, but you would not know it because they truly account for every penny. They save, they invest what they have, and they go from there. So for me, outside of having the conversation, is having a discussion on how to budget. If we were to hone in on one thing, how to budget, because think about this, budgeting for me is the foundation, right? If we talk about, okay, how much are you bringing, how much are you earning? And of course, within the budget, we're talking about Uncle Sam getting his taxes and how much is your true net income when you receive it. And then writing down the categories. Now, I'm not saying that let me put it this way. Everyone have obligations, right? And when they're writing down their obligation, whether it is rent, whether it is utilities, cell phone bill, we know what we're doing with our money. And you don't have to be an Einstein in order to do that, but you definitely need to make sure that that part right there holds you accountable. So if we're talking about budgeting as a personal finance, we're able to address not just the youth, but the adults also. And we can begin with conversations with that. So if parents are saying, well, I don't know what to say to my child, let's sit down and let's create a budget together. And now we're opening dialogue from what is it that you want to do with your life? How does that look? What sort of income do you potentially think you're going to earn? Because let's think about it like this. If we had a conversation about personal finance and we ask some of the youth, what is it that you want to do with your life? And they tell you, and then you follow up with, how much do you think that particular position earns? A lot of them do not know. Right. And if they do not know, how can they properly prepare? Because in their eyes, they're thinking, well, I'm going to work as an accountant and earn 125,000. Wait a minute. You don't do not entry level. You have no experience. Let's back up a little bit and let's talk about reality. Once you know how much your true income is going to be, let's move forward and talk about now the budget. What does that consist of? Do you actually need to go hang out with your friends every other weekend? Now we're talking about behaviors. We're talking about habits. We're talking about what's normal. We're talking about the attitude toward your money. And what I mean by attitude toward your money is if you're being positive or not, if you're facing reality or not. And I'm not saying that people will not have various circumstances, but if we set them up with the proper tools in order to address those particular circumstances, we can do so. But for me, under the umbrella for finance, if you take out economics, if you take out all the theories, if you take out anything else, it would be to budget. You can't save if you don't budget. You can't invest if you don't budget. You can't buy protection for yourself, also known as life insurance, if you do not know how to budget for it. You can't go and have a vacation if you do not know how to budget for it. A lot of people go out and they say, well, oh my God, I've been approved because my credit is great. I've been approved for a mortgage for $400,000. I'm getting a home for $400,000. Well, wait a minute. You were approved for $400,000, but what does your budget say that you can actually purchase a home for? We don't want to be house poor. We don't want to be poor when we buy a vehicle. We don't want to get a luxury vehicle and pull up to the home that we can barely afford and there's no furniture and we only have a can of soup in there. That's not what we want. We do not want to teach our youth to continue with that mentality. It's now time to change the attitude and it's to change the mindset that all of your wealth is in material things. Well, that should not be the case.
Yeah.
It should not be the case. So for me, it's budgeting.
Yeah, I think that's great. Living beyond your means is detrimental to your overall plan, especially whether you have one in place or not. It's overall just detrimental to what you do. I want to change gears a little bit and stay with you as one follow-up, Mr. Bass. One thing we haven't really discussed is the fact that having people in debt, having people just ignorant to the finance world is profitable for some folks. So,
yes.
So that's a big component here that we haven't addressed here. There may be some pushback to these programs. And Ms. LABI mentioned how a lot of these things aren't being implemented at a really high level, at an efficient level. And you start to wonder, is there some intentionality around that because it's so profitable to have some of these folks in these positions? How do we combat that? You know, those folks that are profiting and are seeing great success at the risk and really at the mercy of other people not being able to have these resources. How do we?
Great question, Eddie. This, of course, we are in a capitalistic world. And there are people who unfortunately look forward to people who are not making prudent financial decisions. And the pushback would be so from bankruptcy attorneys or anyone who are capitalizing off of other people's misfortune. But let's face it, just because we're going to offer a personal finance course does not mean that we're going to have 100% success rate, which is why we need, once we have these policies in place, we need to make sure that we are able to improve and scale. So for someone, I would actually challenge that the individuals who are saying, well, wait a minute, we're essentially making money off of those at their demise. Why? Why do you continue to want to earn a living off of someone's demise? What does that do for you? And what is that saying to you about a person? To be honest, as a business owner, there's a solution to every phenomenon. There is a solution to everyone. So even if you have a higher percentage rate of those who are now financially responsible and are no longer in debt, then that's, as a business owner, you have to pivot yourself to accommodate those group of people. So for you to say, well, wait a minute, I do not want to have a personal finance curriculum in place because maybe that's going to interfere with my business, or I'm not going to earn any more money. You're capitalizing off someone else's demise. As a person who owns a business, you need to make sure that you can pivot other places. But not only that, let's look at this. It's not always about you. And I like to say that to people. It is not always about you. If we have trillions of dollars in debt right now, do you think that we're going to erase trillions of dollars in your lifetime? Absolutely not. But what you need to do is make sure that you're setting up the next generation. And it's unfortunate that sometimes these people who are making these decisions are not where others are, meaning that it's not affecting them. So if it's not affecting me, I don't have to do anything. It's not until something hits home that people open their eyes to say, well, wait a minute, maybe we do need this curriculum. Maybe we do need to step back and say that we're capitalizing off of all this negative debt that we have in our society. Maybe we do need to roll out a personal finance program. And trust me when I say this personal finance program that's going to be, and I'm speaking it, going to be in the state of Indiana, does not mean that we would not have any debt. When you look at the states, because it's about 20 or 21 states that have the curriculum in their district. However, when you look at certain surveys, it shows that the states that mandate personal finance courses, as opposed to the states that do not have that mandate, when it comes to credit card debt, it's only a difference of like $194 a person. That's not much. However, when you flip it and you think about that $194 that's on that credit card, accumulating that compound interest for that interest rate, that can add up to thousands. So again, we need to make sure that we have people who are in place that actually care and not have the mentality that it's not affecting me, it's not in my backyard, I'm not going to do anything. Well, in fact, if you are a representative, an elected representative in the state of Indiana, it does affect you. This is your backyard. Everyone here needs to make sure that we excel and we have all the resources. As I said before, we are in a situation right now that people are looking at lack of equity and inequality and systemic racism. So we have to make sure that we put a lens on everything that I just said to make sure that we have this equal playing field. You cannot say that I want to make sure that everyone succeeds in life and then not do anything. You have to make sure that even if you're not the person that makes the decisions, you know someone who does make the decision. And even if you do not want to speak up about it, you can at least be part of the movement. And yes, I said the movement because this is what it is. It's going to take some time. If you look at any movement that we have in our history of this country, nothing happens in one day. Nothing happens in one day. It takes some time, but we need to make sure that we actually do that. Does that answer your question? I know I can ramble some.
No, you're great. You're great. I mean,
Okay.
and I know it's a tough one, and it's a big time hill to climb, and if you feel like you got rollerblades on while you're doing it, it's
Yes.
a tough one. So the simplicity of it all is, can we be decent human beings? And I think that's the question that we ask ourselves. I wanted to come back to you, Miss Lobby, in terms of your research that you've seen throughout the country. I know you mentioned a number of states with a couple different mandates. Indiana is one of them, has the provision in place. The execution is lacking. Have you seen a state out there that we all can model ourselves from, that, hey, they have this provision in place or they have mandates in place and they're doing it the right way? Do you see any state out there or individual community maybe that are that's doing this the right way and seeing great success from it? And maybe there isn't one.
In Florida, at least every high school offers a personal finance class. And in Michigan and Colorado, every school is required to have economics statewide testing. So those are at least some things, but only 6 states actually require a personal finance class. And even then, it's hard to tell whether it's really fruitful or not. So I think there are a lot of different things that different states are doing that are good, but we just need the states to pick apart all the good things and make it into something better for their youth.
Okay, no, that's good.
I think this it's going to take some time. I agree with Rachel. It is out there, but when you think about it, it's still fairly new, right? So we have to make sure that we're able to measure. And my question is, how often are the states going back to measure the program to see if it's actually productive? You have these the 6 states that are mandatory, that the curriculum is there, but are we following up? Are we following through with the graduating students? It would be nice to have like a beta group and say, listen, let's see how productive these classes were in your life based off of the position that you are currently in, and having the interviews and saying, okay, what did you find that was very useful for you to allow you to be in the situation that you are right now? And people will tell you what worked for them and what did not. They will disclose to you that, oh my goodness, I'm so happy I had this conversation, or I'm so happy I learned how to get protection because now I have life insurance, and I spoke to everyone in my family about it, and it came in handy with someone at someone's demise, whatever it is. I think for us to actually say this particular state is doing well, for me, I have yet to see it. And if there is a certain state doing well, they can, all the other states would truly follow their lead. But because I have not noticed a state that is actually doing everything in an efficient way, we don't have a guideline to follow, right? Because even though our education standards is from state to state, right? We all know if one particular state is doing something well, it does not matter if it's education or anything else. We're following their lead because now they have created the blueprint for it. We're still trying to get there. We are still struggling. Think about this. We only have about 20 states that offer the curriculum, right? And only 6 that's like, no, you have to have it as a requirement. So that lets you know that is less than half of the states that are in the United States that feel as though it's important. It's important. It's not important to talk about personal finance. It's not important to educate when they don't realize that once someone becomes 18, we basically just say, okay, you're on your own. What tools have you provided these students with to allow them to now be on their own? Just because you are an adult by legal standards does not mean you have the mental capacity to make these mature conversations, right? And then you have not even set anyone up in place to have a network or a village or organizations for them to contact to say, listen, I'm having a problem with making decisions when it comes to my finances. I have no idea how to budget. I want to purchase a car. Should I pay cash? Should I finance? These are conversations that young adults are thinking about, right? And I'm going to use myself as an example again. One of my nephews called, and and he wanted to purchase a vehicle. And everyone kept telling him to finance. No, let's go ahead, create a budget over the next quarter. Let's talk about all your income, your expenses, and let's break it down. So he was able to save $8,000 in 3 months. Walked into the car dealership and said, this is how much, and he didn't spend the whole 8,000 because I told him your budget is 5,500. That's your budget. Used car. This is your first car that you're going to pay cash for. And then I need for you to pay your car insurance for an entire year. Now, you do not have to worry about car insurance. You do not have to worry about a car note. But see, he has me. So we need to make sure that we have people who are in the community where these students are accessible. Because if we don't, we are continually having these, as I call, generational curses. We have to now figure out how to break it. So this is how we do it. But in order for us to do that, we have to make sure that every state is so important, not just Indiana, but every state in the United States, they think about the success of their students, right? Because eventually they're going to be CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. They're going to be entrepreneurs. They're going to be laborers. They're going to fulfill every role. And they may be able to articulate how to make business decisions, but what about the household? We don't want to continue to have this over and over and over again. So once we have that blueprint, we can go ahead and implement that and have success across the board, right? Because to me, success is more than just how much you earn. Success has success is subjective. My success is different than anyone else's on this panel discussion. But we can safely say that at the end of the day, success when it comes to your finances is making sure that you have ends meet and you're not living paycheck to paycheck. And we have to make sure that we set these guidelines up for these students to not work to earn a paycheck just to live paycheck to paycheck. And half the time, they're not even living paycheck to paycheck. It's paycheck to Monday. It's paycheck to Monday. So let's talk about getting our needs as opposed to our wants first. Let's talk about how we're going to go through different stages of this personal finance class. I truly will hope that once the policymakers agree that they do a couple of things. They're looking at other states to see what course, the personal finance course they have and how it's actually set up and what are they implementing. Is it only credit? Is it only banking and that's it? No, we need budget, credit, how to bank, how to write and keep your balance in your ledger. Yes, everybody doesn't write checks anymore. A lot of people just swipe, but you still need to make sure you address every time you swipe, because next thing you know, you may have a decline or overdraft. I don't know about you, but I work too hard to give away $35, right? We need to talk about loans. We need to talk about protection. There are so many things that we need to include in a personal finance course. So while we're looking, if this is something that we're going to do, I strongly believe that we need to make sure that we are looking at these other states and see what's within their curriculum and see how they measure the success of the students to see if it was productive or not. And I'm pretty sure it is productive, but we need to see the level so that we can improve upon what the previous states were doing and move forward, right? Because this is not something that we should have to create from scratch. Let's see what someone else is doing and seeing if it works and seeing that, okay, let's go ahead and add to this curriculum, or according to this state and the statistics that we see within this state, there is a need for this particular conversation, especially, as I said before, this area is not a one size fit all. One area may need a particular subject more than the other, right? That's my opinion on that.
No, I appreciate that. In respect of time, I want to get close to wrapping up here, but want to make sure, basically what I'm hearing is, first and foremost, we got to be accountable for our own personal decisions, making sure we're trying to choose wisely. And if we don't have that information, try to go seek that information. It's out there. It's attainable. In some cases, it's much harder than others in terms of being able to have those resources, the social capital, those types of things. That's what we're trying to do here with this Closing the Gap series, is provide some of those resources to people, and they can reach out to us as we're here and doing these different things. But That's the first thing, just being accountable and taking the responsibility for your own personal decisions. But obviously, this is very important. The education piece needs to be implemented. It needs to be efficient. It needs to be mandated to some degree to making sure that it's a graduation requirement and not just an elective that you just kind of breeze through. A standalone opportunity for students coming through the school system and making sure they're starting themselves in adulthood on the right foot from a financial capacity, whether their family circumstances and legacies have put them in those positions or not. They have those resources readily available to them. With that said, I wanted to come back to you, Ms. LABI. Do you have any other thoughts or interest in most importantly, how we as a people can better assist you in what you're doing, your movement, because where you are in regards to your age and your peer group, you're the future. So ultimately, we want to get behind whatever you're doing, especially in this capacity. It's so impactful and so important.
So on the collaborative side, I think just contacting us would be helpful right now, and actually taking our survey if you have an institution that's interested, or if you have teachers who are interested, because we're actually trying to work on a local level. I live near Purdue University, so I can contact Purdue Federal Credit Union and have them do work with high schools around my area. So I want to do that. But on a legislative side, we were initially advocating for a mandatory personal finance class, and we still want that, but for now that's on hold. We're going to focus on the provision right now. And ever since we found out about the provision, we're kind of deciding what to do and what our action will be, because we know it's not being upheld well. We know students aren't learning about this stuff properly. So we're just trying to figure out our strategy. But yeah, I guess contacting me in any way, you can look me up on LinkedIn. My email is on LinkedIn, through my website. That would be beneficial.
Fantastic. I want to thank you so much. I think you've been great. You're inspiration to all of us, and inspiration to me personally. Yes. I have a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old. Both will have birthdays here soon, but I've already talked to them about you after our first conversation and how great you are and the things that you're doing. So I'm sure that you're inspiring others and continue to do the good work that you're doing, and we'll continue to support you. So thank you for that. Ms. Shabazz, do you have any other closing remarks or things that you'd like to share, or contact information, or things that you think would be vital as we close here?
Well, my contact information is on LinkedIn. What I would like to share is I don't want this to just be a conversation just left on the table. I want this to continue and be the beginning, because as you know, this is where it actually began. So hopefully those who are who are viewing the panel discussion, as well as listening, are able to move forward and take what we're doing and contact both Rachel and myself. We're doing things to implement personal finance in our community. We're collectively, rather. However, we're at different levels in different aspects, but working with the both of us in whatever way you can in order to make sure that we do have this mandate to show the importance. So for me, I definitely am open to collaborating with any and everyone so that we can keep it going and ultimately have this mandated into our curriculum in the state of Indiana. But if my last thoughts are, don't stop. Don't stop here. Be the voice, be the change, and doing, not just sitting around and saying, oh, I want. Even if you have the conversation with someone and you don't know who else to talk to, that person may have someone else to talk to, but be that change and stand ground with what you're doing. But that's for me. Show the importance in regards to education. And if it's not for you, it's for the next generation. It really is. And I do want to applaud Rachel for what she's doing. Really do. I'm very excited for you. And I'm going to contact you after this, but very excited for you. And I strongly believe that if we continue this, we're leading by example and showing the youth that you matter. You matter, and we're listening to you, and we want something better for you. But for everyone else, I want you to be the change, and do not stop with this conversation today.
Absolutely not. We will definitely continue especially this Closing the Gap series. I want to take this time to thank you both. I really appreciate you being here. Your thoughts, your wisdom, your insight has been phenomenal and invaluable. So really appreciate you being here and being a part of it. I want to definitely thank InnoPower and Emil Ekior as we begin to launch this Closing the Gap series, also with the Indianapolis recorder, Robert Chagat, two vital components to what we do here. I also want to thank Northwestern Mutual and Wise Financial as we've been able to continue this movement here and continue to try to close the gap. That's what we're here for, and provide some resources and social capital for folks. So stay tuned in, continue to follow us and listen into the next one. I'm looking forward to it. And we will continue to provide these resources and make it a better way for all of us. So thank you again, and reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.